How's it? Welcome back to the channel. It's awesome to see you again. The art of thievery. How do we become experts in taking ideas from somebody else and making them our own? Throughout my career as a photographer, I have made no bones about the fact that pretty much all of the photographs I've ever taken have their roots in somebody else's images, as I feel most people do, whether they're conscious of it or not. As soon as I kind of realized, right, I'm kind of down with the idea of appropriating other people's ideas and putting them into my own little image bank and mixing them up and spitting out something that's actually mine, it made my photography, I feel, a lot more personal to me, because I realized that, I'm actually not trying to create something wholly original. So I'm not fighting with it anymore. And it just made me feel nice and chill. I thought, okay, well, let's look at this. How do I go about this process of finding inspiration? What am I actually doing? So regular viewers of the channel, maybe not regulars, maybe you just watched it recently, will know that Bob Carlos Clarke is one of my favorite photographers. And I was aware of his images, I think, from a very early age. I say early age, in my 20s or something, mostly because I was into punk, and one of his images is on the cover of Phantasmagoria by The Damned. So when I started being able to kind of, explore the internet, because when I was a student, the internet was just a very early burgeoning thing, I came across Bob's work. Maybe it wasn't on the internet. Who knows? Maybe my brain's just getting kerfuddled. And what I saw was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And in a previous video, I talked about processing, manipulation of images. And that was something that I think latterly I kind of thought about. But initially, what drew me, and I've got the image of Phantasmagoria there. I'm sure it has a proper word, name, title, whatever you want to call it. But I was like, look at this guy, his tones, the brightness of the light. If you look at this photograph and her skin tone, it's very white, it's very pale. And I thought that looks pretty cool, because at the time, my portraits had like a muddy sort of grey feel to their skin tones, which I didn't particularly like, mostly because I was sort of struggling with the zone system and all that kind of stuff in black and white photography. And I was never the best as somebody who prints work. So I looked at that and go, I like the contrastiness. Okay, it's the contrastiness, and I see that through not all of Bob's work, but certainly the work that I saw at the time. Very stylized, very punchy in terms of contrast, and that was something that appealed to me. I went, okay, I like that sort of look, and I tried to emulate that, to bring that into my own photography. And contrastiness is fairly easy to replicate, right? It's just, well, either printing on contrasty paper, as you would in the wet darkroom, or in the digital world, just upping the contrast. So yeah, Bob Carlos Clarke, I really like him. If you get a chance, watch the video about him that's on the channel. But yeah, his work is gorgeous. It really, I've tried to replicate it once or twice. Subsequently, certainly last year, I tried in the studio here with some models, and it was very difficult. It was like super difficult. So anyway, so kudos to Bob Carlos Clarke. So that's it. Contrastiness. The style, the very punchy black and whites. That was such a wonderful thing that I got from Bob. Now, around about the same time, there was another photographer who I really enjoyed. When I first saw their work, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. This is so awesome. But a completely different vibe to Bob. Look, it's a face. It's Iris Fontaine to Zierfontaine, which is Obie Oberholzer's, I believe it's his first book. And Obie does watch the channel from time to time. So Obie, if this was your first book and I've not just sort of misremembered things, so let us know. Anyway, Obie, I've spoken to him a number of times since I first came across his work, and the man he's awesome. I love talking to him. I love his ideas about photography. Everything is there. He's just a larger than life character. And that was one of the things that I got from his photography. And again, there is a video on the channel about him that I will link to in the description box. And so what I saw when I first started looking at these photographs is that he had this thing at the time of balancing very strong, harsh daylight with flash. Obie likes to use a lot of artificial light in his images. He does these long exposures where he will set up the camera and the exposure might be like half an hour or something. And he would go off with his torch and paint things in and do all sort of crazy stuff. So he was, one of these, a photographer where I look at the work and I go, it's not about, oh my God, like this is the world's most amazing photograph or something of that nature. It's more, here is a man who's not taking it too seriously. I think that was important for me to know at the time. When I look at his body of work and everything, the way that he writes about it, the way he talks about photography, I realized that this is a man who's very passionate about taking photographs and about being, I don't want to put, again, words in people's mouths, but, about being sort of true to the process of taking images. But guys, do you know what? Have fun with it, man. Just do your thing. And that was something that I think was important for me to hear when I was younger, and I feel very much in danger of becoming very serious about my photography. Now, if that were my nature of being serious about my imagery, about being a very, very just so kind of person, then that would be absolutely fine because that would be true to my nature. But for those people who know me in real life, I'm not that. So it would have been a kind of a mismatch. So it was nice for me to come and meet Obie and look at his photography and just go, wow. And also, he was working in South Africa, which is where I was there. I was growing up. I could recognize these things. It made it a lot easier for me to make the leap into looking at photographs that made sense. Bob Carlos Clarke's work is cool, but as a 19-year-old student, I wasn't photographing, famous people dressed in skin-tight clothing, right? But Obie's work, I could imagine me taking these pictures because they were outside. They were there in the real world. All I need to do is just get in my Beetle and go. As Obie said, you go, you get. And I wish I'd actually gone more when I was younger. But that was the thing, so I looked at this work and it was exciting. It was work that I just kind of go, do you know what? Actually, the technical aspects of it are relatively simple. But why aren't I doing this? The light especially. The way that he was happy to photograph in light that might be, I think, difficult for some people, but he went, I'm going to make it my own. I recognize what I've got to work with, and I'm going to use it in a way that plays to its strengths rather than, kind of trying to make it something that it isn't. All right, so I'm going to have a little drinky poo because my throat's very dry. It's that time of the year, really, when the heaters are on and all that kind of stuff. It just dries you out, something rotten, and you don't want to hear me coughing. There we go. So we got Paul Strand. Paul Strand, again, a photographer who... Why do I say, again, a photographer? Of course he's a photographer. This is not a channel about famous chefs. Keith Floyd, right? This is about photographers. I came across, he says that, why do I use the same phrases the whole time? I was introduced to Paul Strand through the class Visual Communication. I think it may have been when I was a student. The photographs, I think quite a lot of us maybe have seen, of Wall Street, the repetition, the ideas. It's one of those kind of famous photographs that's, gets pulled out when people talk about certain photographers, and Paul Strand is one of them. And it's a great image. I love it. It's awesome. But it's not a photograph that made me want to go and visit that place. What an interesting thing to say. I don't know if you ever considered that about the photographs that you look at. I didn't see that image of Paul Strand's, or the one of the lady with the blind sign. I go, I want to go and see these images. But when I look at Southwest, which is Paul Strand's images from the Southwest United States, so New Mexico, Colorado, those kind of places, I want to go to these places. They intrigue me. It gives me a sense of wanderlust, right? So it's kind of the jealousy that's slightly playing at me. I'm going, I really want to go and check out these lights. Look at the light, how it changes. And again, like I was saying with Obie or Oberholzer, where I grew up in South Africa has a similar kind of light feel. That you have this kind of, these lots of storm clouds coming, but then some bright sunshine and all that kind of stuff. And I look at this and I go, this is quite clearly not South Africa, but it's an area of America that for some reason or other, and maybe it is because of photographs like this and other people who've taken pictures in those areas, that I just go, I feel a draw towards, I want to go down to New Mexico, to all these sort of places, and just be in this landscape. I get that feeling from Paul Strand's images that I can almost feel the sun on me. I can almost feel the wind coming through that, and I can't quite put my finger exactly on why. And I think that's okay. If we look at images and go, do you know what? I really like this picture. I like the light, or I like, the shape that it's making, or the ghost towns, things like this. And I go, I would love to just be able to go there. No doubt this particular ghost town or these houses and stuff are probably long gone. But how lucky would he be to just walk around in an environment? Maybe you hear a dog barking off in the distance somewhere. Just thinking about the ghosts of all the people and the events that have come through. And I don't think that's what necessarily Paul Strand was thinking about when he photographed these, but that's the feel that I get from the images. That they are just matter of fact. There's nothing too fancy about them. There's nothing too tricksy. He's not using, unlike Obie Oberholzer's work, he's not using, lots of light and making them dynamic, because I don't think that was Paul's personality. I don't know him. Well, I've spoken with Obie a number of times, so I can see the connection quite clearly. But with Paul, I don't necessarily feel it. Maybe he was just a quiet person, and again, that speaks to me, because I am actually a very quiet, I won't say withdrawn photographer, but I love taking pictures when either I feel alone, like in a city, or where I'm out in the landscape, in a place where people used to be. And in South Africa, you get a lot of these sort of broken down old buildings in the middle of nowhere and stuff. And I found those massively intriguing. So that's Paul Strand. If you're not familiar with his work, go check it out. He did more than just this. I mean, a huge body of work, a massively influential photographer, and also work that I feel is something that is within the grasp of most people to emulate to a reasonable degree. I think that's an important thing to bear in mind when one's looking for art to steal. Right, is what can I do with this photography? Can I actually replicate? I asked recently about whether or not, do you feel, overwhelmed by all the pictures of great photographers, or is it something you can go aspire to? And somebody, I think, made a fair comment that there's some photographers whose work you see and you go, but that's just beyond me. Right, the risk of starting off another flame war in the comments, like somebody like Annie Leibovitz. Okay, lots of setup, lots of lights, stylists, film stars. Okay, that's beyond the ability of most of us, right? But somebody like Paul Strand, fairly simple camera. In fact, his camera is worse than anybody who's watching this, right? So we know it's not about the camera. the environment for, I don't know, I've never been to the Southwest, but I'm hoping to put together like a in-person workshop there over a week, like next year. So that'd be pretty cool. So watch the space. I think you could go there. You could go to somebody like this and find those pictures. You could do something similar to other people. Eggleston we've talked about many times. Okay, Eggleston, it's very hard to actually replicate, but it's something you could try to use. It's I think it's within the grasp. So find somebody whose work you kind of go, that really inspires me, but also feel that I could copy it. I could take what I want. I could appropriate bits and turn them into my own as part of the recipe of my photographs. There was somebody the other day who mentioned in the comments one of my favorite hidden photographers of all time. He says, waving the book around, and it is this lady here, Loretta Lux. He says, there we go. German photographer, photographs kids, is very much in the mold of somebody who uses digital to create their images. And if you watch the previous video about digital versus, where's editing, is crime, what have you, this is somebody who I think falls into that category that you would sort of want to talk about if you were having a discussion about what role sort of digital editing plays in sort of making a photograph. I find Loretta Lux, it was this image actually, this little drummer boy. Let me see if I can get that. I'll put it up on the screen for you. So, I find these absolutely sort of haunting, bizarre, weird. At the time I found them because I was looking for images to draw inspiration from to photograph children that weren't going to look like everybody else's pictures of children. When I was a portrait photographer in the studio, I would photograph a lot of kids, and I looked at all the other people who were photographing kids, and they were all doing the same thing. They're all doing a very similar sort of style. And in those days, it was, I think they're all emulating Lisa Fisser. She was doing these quite very pretty, very lovely, beautifully toned, because the lighting, she's again nice simple lighting, just one big light, bouncing off the wall, coming back, doing a bit of wraparound, but she understood how to use it, make that work, caress the kids and have them look really good. Lovely sort of lighting, just like a big blanket around them. And that was kind of cool, and I do like that style, but I wanted something that stood out, that was completely different. And Loretta Lux absolutely ticked these boxes. Her and V. Spears, they were taking kids' photographs that was so different. And while I never followed through with it, when I look at Loretta Lux's photographs, certainly the ones that are very obviously a digital composition, in so much as the background, what she's got with the background, I thought, okay, well that again gives me I was going to say freedom, gives me the belief that I'm allowed to do something like this. That's a very odd thing to think about now that it was actually I've actually said it, is like, okay, I have an idea, and I think maybe a lot of you will kind of feel the same sort of dilemma in your head, is that what am I supposed to do? Can I do this? And of course the answer is always yes. But I feel that once you see it in somebody's work, once you recognize the seed of the same idea, or, that you kind of go, okay, validation, thank you. And also you get a bit of a direction. Okay, what have they done here? What has she put together? There is a thing, I look at Loretta Lux's images and she changes the backgrounds, and some of them work, I think, well. And I'm not talking about how real they look or something, but the background itself, like this particular picture here of this girl here, that background seems to suit it. For me, it works. It blends in with the whole image, whereas something like this, right? I think it's a young girl, all right? The background doesn't really, it feels odd, feels disjointed. Maybe that's the point, right? Maybe it's just like, and I do think, I said earlier, oh, the background feels real, it feels like it's fits. I think what I should clarify that. So what I mean is the background itself feels like it's part of the image, not a real background, but it feels like it's there. It feels like a supporting image, where some of these just feel like it's a little bit like this. Okay, that's quite clearly a digital background, but it's green, and then there's the green of the girl's skirt, and it feels like it matches the vibe of the image, whereas the other ones doesn't quite like this. Doesn't quite fit. I know the blue of the sky and stuff like this is all very similar, but that kind of feels a bit disjointed. And there you go. See, that's another example of what I talked about a couple of weeks ago about it's okay to like a photographer, but you're not required to love all of their work. That's, I think, an important thing. So you take the bits that you like and you move on, you go with them. Oh, shit. He says, right. Now, of course, stealing art, the theft of art, what have you, is not limited simply just to photography. It could be all manner of things. Album covers, TV shows, films, other art forms. It's there. It's just having a process in your head, knowing what it is that you'd like to pull out and think. And I hope that, from having seen what I kind of get from various images and how I've kind of brought them into my own work, that it gives you a bit of an insight into how that process is. And if you want to find out more about V Spears, because I love her work, then check out this video over here. Thank you ever so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I will see you again soon.